Okay, so welcome to Vantage Point Conversations. Welcome to my audience, those watching live and those watching on the replay. So my guest today is Kevin Smith. Kevin, my opening monologue is always the same. I never introduce my guests purely because I think I would do a very bad job of it. So please take as long, as little as you would like, just to introduce yourself, highlights, lowlights, anything in between, anything that you think would be good for people to know about you, and then we can just jump into our conversation.
Well, thank you, Colin. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me, by the way. Boy, where do I begin? I'll just keep it basic, keep it short. The truth is, Colin, I'm just an ordinary guy who was touched by the actions of an ordinary woman who did an extraordinary thing. She was kind. And an act of kindness on Good Friday morning, 2023, became a catalyst for a chain of events. It's really impossible to put into words. But long story short, a routine trip to the grocery store on a honey-do list for my wife to pick up a couple items. I did that just fine. But when I returned home, I realized I left my wallet behind. And in a moment of panic, in that precise moment, there's a young woman at my front door holding my wallet, asking if it was mine. And from that point on, in a simple attempt to identify who this young woman was, thank her in a more meaningful way, it took on a life of its own and actually became about making a meaningful difference. It opened up a pathway to actually bring people and communities together at a time our world needs it now more than ever, and ultimately inspired me in a simple desire to pay it forward, to ultimately launch the nonprofit Kindness Worldwide, which has a vision to create a culture of kindness in communities throughout the world. Our signature initiative, Kindness Week Worldwide, has started a global movement that's spreading to communities throughout the world. Mayors are engaging, governors are engaging. And I've always lived under a mantra that I believe the meaning of life is to live it in a way to make a meaningful difference. I'm blessed by day to be a wealth advisor. It's very meaningful to me to help others translate their monetary resources into meaningful life experiences. But that simple value, if you will, or desire to make a meaningful difference took on a whole new dimension in a new way on Good Friday morning, 2023. It's brought me here to meet with you this morning. I've met so many friends from all over the world. You are now among them that I never would have had the pleasure, the blessing of meeting were it not for this one act of kindness and its ripple effect. So it's an adventure of a lifetime. I'm holding on for dear life. Never in my wildest dreams would I have envisioned starting any nonprofit, let alone one called Kindness Worldwide, but it's called Worldwide for a reason. And I'm just figuring out as I go, doing the best I can, but hanging on for dear life, if I'm honest.
Yeah, wow, it's amazing. And as with all my guests, we have just like this initial chat, just to make sure that my guest is happy to have a live. And it was one of those great moments because I think from a distance, maybe you can think about you in a certain way and just go, oh, okay, this guy's leading this stuff and it's kindness, and that can be misunderstood. But what I took away from our conversation was that you, like you said at the beginning of this, you're just an ordinary guy. And I took it that you're actually quite, if I say introverted, I don't necessarily like labels, but you're actually quite a person that's quite quiet. Obviously you've created your business as well, and we can talk about the balance in your life and how that actually plays out at the moment. But and you described, okay, yeah, you like having a barbecue and your friends, but you're not this guy that likes necessarily to be on stage and being in front of all these people. And it's so it sort of blows my mind when I think about it, because and we can talk about the film that's soon to be released and in a second, but I've watched part of that, and I see more of the journey, and then when you actually witness, you're having to go to, you went to Italy, you're on stage and you're speaking about these things, and I'm like, wow, how does that feel? And I actually wanted to ask you, like, you come across as quite confident, and I don't like, how is it to stand in front of all those people to give a message that sometimes you have to convince people. Some people are already convinced, depends, I guess, which room you're in. How does that feel, and to keep doing it time and time again? Do you feel confident to do it, or yeah, what is it like for you?
Well, looks can be deceiving. Um, I might come across as being confident. I mean, I am very secure in who I am, my value system, my principles, the foundation upon which my life is built. And I think it starts there, being comfortable in your own skin, if you will. But this journey has been anything but comfortable. I've done public speaking throughout my life and career, and people say I do it well, and I come across well, but that doesn't mean that deep down I'm still that insecure young boy, growing up just trying to stand out, as best I can and make the world a better place. And the irony, Colin, is that before this adventure began, innocently enough, from an act of kindness, I thought I had the rest of my life figured out. And the term I use is I was comfortably coasting. I mean, I have a very successful career. I'm blessed to have a wonderful team around me that shares my values. And, I often say I make my living by making a difference. It's very meaningful. And I thought I had the rest of my life figured out. My wife and I'm very blessed to have a wonderful, my best friend, is by my side. And we're trying to slow down at a world that wants to be so fast paced. And then this act of kindness happened, and it started to take a life of its own. It started to get bigger and bigger, and it's bigger than me. It's bigger than the both of us. And it's forced me to really confront all of my worst fears all at once. I mean, I don't know if comfortable, I don't think I'll ever be comfortable with any of this. I'm getting comfortable being uncomfortable, but the best way to explain it would be to visualize your worst fears, whatever they may be. It could be public speaking, it could be snakes, reptiles, whatever it may be. Most of us, number one, avoid our fears or try to run in the opposite direction of them. And the best way to describe this journey, it's going on 3 years now, is like I'm doing a dead sprint at every single one of them each and every day. And the things that I'm doing to try to make a difference in the world and at a time it needs it most is causing me to leave my comfort zone. And I often say that on Good Friday morning, the day after, I left my comfort zone knowing it would never return. And I know you got to see the film or most of it. And there's a key scene in that film. I call it the head drop moment, where it occurred to me that this movement that I'd accidentally, organically started just to acknowledge this woman publicly for her kind act, it actually opened up a pathway to bring people and communities together more broadly. And it was my brother-in-law, who's now my chief strategy officer, who pointed out to me what I accidentally had created. He said, Kevin, this framework for Kindness Week, this community celebration of kindness, he said, you can't stop with what you've done. You've got to start a nonprofit. You can bring this to communities anywhere and everywhere. And it was in that moment, like my head went down and I knew he was right. And I knew my life would never be the same because, my conscience would weigh on me. And if there was an opportunity to actually make an impact and I didn't pursue it, I knew it would weigh on me the rest of my life. But I also knew what that journey would entail. And I like to be behind the scenes. I don't like to be on camera. I don't like to be in front of an audience speaking and all the things that this journey has entailed. But I also know that this movement goes nowhere if I don't share the story and if I don't try to inspire others and, more importantly, empower others to be the change we wish for. And we all have that ability within us. But, I don't want to be the face of anything. If this is about me, Colin, I'd be so far to Dodge, no one could find me. I just want to run away in a secluded place with a guitar too. I got a few behind me and just, be at peace with everything. And that's not my world now. And it's not my wife's world. And we've had to reconcile what this journey is going to mean and what the rest of our life's going to look like. And, as meaningful as this journey has been, and it's been a blessing. It's been the most meaningful endeavor of my life. But it's been a blessing and a curse because, as this movement is bringing life maybe into a world that needs it. It's inspiring others at a time. Maybe they're feeling, hopeless. It's giving them hope. In a way, I'm mourning a death. And that death is the life that I thought I would have, that my wife and I would have together, that we were leaving behind for whatever this new life is going to be. And as meaningful it is, and as important as it is, I still struggle with that. And, there were times where I'm on radio shows now, I'm on TV programs, I'm doing interviews, podcasts. I didn't even know what a podcast was 3 years ago. And I've been on more than my fair share, but there were times where I knew I'd be on a podcast the next day and I wouldn't sleep the night before. I'd be like in my head, what am I going to say? I'm always a perfectionist. Every word's got to be right. And I've just learned, I just got to just trust my instincts and just be me and just be authentic and, not take myself too seriously. Do I enjoy it? No, but is it necessary? Yeah, I guess I come across okay, but it's necessary. And here I am. And like I said, hanging on for dear life.
Yeah. It was actually, I was quite curious to understand what your life looks like now, because so you created your own company, you've got a team there, and my understanding is that they kind of support. Do you have any input on that business anymore? Do you have any capacity or any time to have any influence over that business, or is it just all about the Kindness Worldwide?
Well, I do. I'm very still engaged in my practice. In fact, my title is managing director, and I've always been a visionary, long-term thinker. And I've always been aware that succession planning is years in the making. It's not something that happens overnight. And I think it takes 10 years to have a succession plan. I don't plan to retire. I have no desire to retire because it's meaningful what I do by day. I enjoy it. But I've got a team around me. And a number of years ago, I knew that whether my clients would say it or not, if they look at me in the mirror, they see a few gray hairs and maybe a few less of them now than what they used to be. And they may not say it, but they might be wondering, well, what happens if Kevin retires? Or what happens if, I get hit by a truck? I do plan to look both ways when I cross the street, but, I know these thoughts probably come across their mind. And so I knew that the business cannot just depend upon me. It's got to depend upon us. I've got to build a team. I got to mentor a team, instill on them my values and my beliefs and the right way to, to do things. And I'm blessed to have wonderful, talented, heart-centered people around me. They're top-notch professionals. More importantly, they're top-notch people. And so over the last number of years, I've mentored them. They can handle the day-to-day. So they're more in the business. I like to use the term, I'm more on the business. As managing director, I'm doing things now like business development, community engagement, things I enjoy. And I'll step in some more complex planning engagements, but they can handle the day-to-day. So now, ironically, now that I was kind of weaning my way out of the day-to-day, so to speak, responsibilities, I always said it's important to be in control of the business, never have a business control you. And for the longest time, I didn't have life-work balance because it was so dependent upon me, it was consuming me, but now that's not the case. I've got a wonderful team. And the irony is now with Kindness Worldwide, I'm starting over with taking what's going to be a global organization from launch to scale at warp speed. It's all heart, no staff. I just got a handful of volunteers, ambassadors who give what they got. They believe in this mission and vision, and they're helping us best they can. I'm largely funding it on my own. The model is there to bring in others to help support it. But I'm having to build an organization again at this stage of my life when I never in my wildest dreams thought I would be doing it. I'm trying to scale back, but instead I'm ramping up. And so that's kind of been this struggle dynamic is now I'm like building another business again, which, it's not really a business. I always say Kindness Worldwide is our nonprofit. It's not mine. And its future really does depend upon us and how our global community embraces it and wants to support it. And maybe the beauty is people look at Kindness Worldwide and all it's accomplished and they go to our website. They think it's a huge organization, with dozens of people. It's me and a handful of people just believe in something bigger than themselves. It's all heart, no ego, no staff. And that's the beauty of it. And that's worked to this point, but I also know that's not going to work to take it to the next level because there's things that are going to take resources. We want to bring kindness curriculums into the classrooms. We think it's important to instill values in our children who represent the future. We want to put public service campaigns out there to turn anti-bullying into pro-kindness. So we have a campaign called Cool to Be Kind. We want to send a message to our children that it's hip, fashionable, trendy, and cool to be kind. It's a strength. Turn anti-bullying into pro-kindness. That takes resources. So the movement itself costs nothing, but there are things that are going to take resources, and that's going to entail building an organization, scaling it. So it's a whole new reality. It's a whole new world, so to speak. And again, I'm just relying on instinct and figuring out as I go.
It's, that is quite an objective, because I was just thinking you're basically building what effectively in my head is like this corporation that takes so long to do. And you mentioned this word ego, and I think maybe that is one of the things, because it's not done with ego. And I come from the corporate world, so I know ego slows down a lot of things, and I think maybe that helps you move faster. But it's very ambitious what you're trying to achieve, and I'm just thinking, there's 24 hours in a day. Do you get to sleep? And where do you call your priorities? And like you said, you're being invited onto podcasts and lives like this, and you're having to give up your time. And how do you structure your day? Because then what happened in my head was, I started to think, because at some point you needed to kind of drag this along. And we talked previously before doing the live, and I said to you, it almost feels like a tsunami. So I would imagine you've gone from trying to drag this thing, trying to convince people, and then it's almost like this tsunami's come along. And how do you control your day? How do you make decisions? You still have a wife, right? You still have family, etc. And it's like, how do you make time for that? Is that an all-encompassing sacrifice? You don't have that. How do you wrestle with that, and how do you make those decisions?
That's a great question, and I wish I had the answer. There's no easy answer. If you can find another 24 hours in the day to give me, that wouldn't even be enough. And I'm trying to make the most of every minute, every hour of every day the best I can. And this has been all-consuming. And so the reality is there's rarely a minute or an hour of every day where I'm not focused on something that's, I don't know if the term business is the right term, because it's meaningful and I enjoy it. It's not work. When you love what you do, it's not work, but it does take time and energy, and it takes focus away from often family. And my wife is important. It's been a struggle for both of us, because she knows I'm a go big or go home kind of guy. And my life history is all about putting my mind to something and it gets done. Despite all the odds, all the obstacles, it doesn't matter. I put my mind to something, it just happens. And my wife is more of a Mother Teresa type, just do small things with great love. And we complement each other very, very well. And, I think one of the many touching aspects of the film for such a time as this is just the struggle behind the scenes, if you will. My wife, in terms of being aware of the magnitude of this calling, and myself, and trying to come to terms with that. But I'm still figuring it out. And I don't have it figured out. I just have confidence and belief that I will, but I've got to get back to some balance. You mentioned about meeting with people like early on in this journey. April 2023 is when it began. We launched Kindness Worldwide on November 9th, 2023, just 7 months later. Everything was happening at warp speed. I was meeting with people day after day after day. It was like 300 people by July of that year I'd met with, and tried to get them to see what I see as to the vision, the potential to actually make an impact. And, it occurred to me that many people, had a hard time really seeing it the way I could see it. And only I could see it, I try to convey it. And some people would nod their head and say they got it, and they would try to maybe help me as best they could. But it occurred to me, like, you know what? Nope, they don't see it. Or if they see it, they only see a piece of it. More than likely, they think I'm absolutely nuts. And my definition of pride changed in this journey, because I've never been one that's, I'm very humble. I don't try to do anything for achievement, or, those accolades come, but it's never been about that to me. But my definition of pride changed, because I realized that pride is also worrying about what other people think. And once I just had the confidence of my convictions that, it doesn't matter what people think, it's what I know, but it was a struggle, because I couldn't get other people to see what I see. Now we have the benefit of a film, a feature-length film, that even then only gives you the Cliff Notes version of what's the potential of this movement. But at least now there's a visual connection that people can actually see it in the film. But one of my good friends, I confided with in this journey, a great friend from high school, and I was venting in a little bit of my frustration about, getting people to engage and to see the potential. He said, Kevin, he said, no one will ever see what you see. He said, only you can truly see it. He said, what matters is that they see what you do. And once, he kind of put it in context and said, you know what, I'm just going to keep doing, and I'm going to keep going. And eventually they'll see it. And the people that are meant to be part of this will. But also it's like, I need to let go of the gas from time to time and just recharge the batteries. And I've been sprinting a marathon for almost 3 years now. And from the April to November 2023, when we launched Kindness Worldwide, I was sprinting a marathon. And if we would have launched Kindness Worldwide probably 2 weeks later, it would have killed me. I wasn't sleeping. I wasn't eating. I had no time to eat. It wasn't like I wasn't aware of it, but the ideas kept coming, and the magnitude of it all. The analogy I use now is I'm not sprinting a marathon anymore, but I'm running it fast enough. I'll win every race. So I'm slowing down somewhat, but I'm still going way too fast. And I've got to find that balance again, that life-work balance, so to speak. It's a journey. It's a quest. And I can't say I've been very successful so far, and I got to be. But as soon as I feel like my tank is on fumes, someone sends me an encouraging word, a kind note, or something that recharges the batteries. And I think that's why I say it's a we endeavor. It's not a me one. Kindness Worldwide is our story. It's not mine. We're all playing a part of this. And I can point the finger, Colin, to any one of dozens of people. And I could say, if it were not for that one person, Kindness Worldwide would not exist. This movement would have gone nowhere. And so it truly depends upon all of us to take this story, this movement to where I know it can go. But, everyone's really made it what it is so far. And without that support around me, that, the community of kindred spirits, they give me energy. They give me strength. They inspire me. You inspire me. Randy McNeely inspires me. So many people are part of this journey. Their stories inspire me. And if they can keep going, then I'll keep going too.
Wow. Do you have a vision that one day you'll step away, or is that's not in the long-term vision?
Well, I have a dream that that'll be the case, because I think what I want more than anything, Colin, is I want others in our global community to start taking this movement and making it theirs. It's ours. It's not mine. And right now, like I recognize I reluctantly am the face of something I never wanted to be the face of. But I want the faces of this movement to be everyone. All of our ambassadors, all of our champions of kindness that are really embracing this and bring it to their communities. And so I have a vision, and I think it's attainable. There's a path. We need to elevate kindness to the global shared value that represents all of humanity. I don't think there's anyone in the world, unless they live under a rock, that would not agree that our world needs more kindness now more than ever. Well, how do we bring that about? Well, we encourage it, we recognize it, we reward it, and we celebrate it. And that's what Kindness Week Worldwide, our signature initiative, is all about. And so my aim is that, for 8 days every year, Kindness Week Worldwide, is that it becomes a thing that everyone knows. It's Kindness Week Worldwide. We're going to donate blood in the spirit of kindness to pay it forward. We can save lives. We can have police departments issuing kindness citations from throughout the world to see the good in our communities that defines our communities. There's a role for protecting our communities, but there's also a role for celebrating the best of our communities and changing the paradigm. But to elevate kindness to the global shared value that represents all of humanity, we need the political system to engage. Governor Shapiro, state of Pennsylvania, has formally recognized Kindness Week Worldwide. Well, the last time I checked, there's 49 other governors who haven't. We want all 50 governors to not only issue the proclamation, but to inspire constituents to embrace the spirit of this meaningful week. And ultimately, the United Nations, every country, despite our differences, every member nation of the United Nations should at least agree on kindness. And if we can't stand up for kindness, what do we stand for? So what I'd also like to see eventually is let's get every member nation to go on record and recognize Kindness Week Worldwide officially, not in name only, but with actions and spirit. And if we can bring people together like we've done in York, Pennsylvania, my hometown, and many other communities, we can bring people together for 8 days in the spirit of kindness. We can extend that throughout the year and create a culture of kindness that's pervasive. Yeah, I'm not I'm a realist. I mean, right, we're not going to get everyone. We don't need to get everyone. We just got to get enough to change the culture, change the mindset, and remind everybody that kindness is a universal language we all understand, we all relate to, and the power of kindness is unlike any other, and we each have that power within us. It simply requires a simple choice to exercise it in every moment of every day. We each have the power to be the reason someone believes in the goodness of people. And if we focus on what we can control, which is we can control that, and we do it one by one, we can change the world. And I'm convinced of that. And so until that happens, until it's all 50 governors in every country in the United Nations elevating kindness, I've got work to do. But when that happens, I finally feel like, you know what? It's taken care, it's running on its own. And I'll step back. I'd like to step back yesterday if I can, but I'm in it to win it. And I put my mind to something, it gets done, and we all can do this together. I'm absolutely convinced of that.
That's I so we'll talk about the film in a second, but when I was watching it, and then the little I know about you, I was like, yeah, this is the guy that needed to do this. Just your mentality, the way that you see things, but it is that contradiction between absolutely when you set your mind to something that you can achieve it, and you know I can't imagine that there was a day that you went, no, we can't do this. I don't think you're that type of person. And I'm still impressed that that type of person also is this very quiet, introspective person that, doesn't want to be on stage. And it's amazing that you're continuing to do that. And I get that you're supported a lot by everybody, and that refuels you when you get those messages of kindness. And I wanted to say this message, and I don't know if this is going to land very well, but that your face is, kindness worldwide. I was wondering, the day that you can actually take your face off of that and just have that symbol be recognized without your face being on it, that must be a very proud day in it, which seems odd. Does that make sense?
No, it makes perfect sense. I mean, that's the goal. That's the vision. I was interviewed for a book. It was a number of weeks ago, and it came up in the conversation about legacy. And to me, everything I do, it's the meaning of what I do. And I'd like to think that, whenever I depart this earth, and we're all going to depart this earth someday, but I'd like to think that when that happens, I will have left the world a little bit better place because I lived in it than had I had not. So that's legacy. And knowing that what you have done makes a difference and makes an impact well beyond our lifetimes. And we all have that ability, I think, within us. But I said in that interview that if kindness worldwide does not exist as an entity, as a movement, then if it doesn't exist in 200 years, I've failed. Because that's legacy. That means that, the rest of the world and future generations are going to embrace this movement and Kindness Week worldwide and celebrate it every year and donate blood and just change the focus. There's so much focus on what divides in this world. And that's where, the news media is reinforcing every day all the negativity. And I think the media needs to look in the mirror, take a hard look like I did, and recognize that we all have a role to make our world a better place. We all can be better. I was a good person before Good Friday morning, 2023, but I'm a much better person now because of this one act of kindness. And I realized without even knowing it that some of my own actions and behaviors were kind of feeding into this divisiveness. I mean, I'd be very passionate about political events and things I'd see on the news, and you get frustrated. And I would feel powerless to do anything about it, but I would get frustrated. I'd point the finger at so many people, and there's a lot of finger pointing that can go around. But a good friend of mine, his name's Tony Fry, and actually he and his wife, one of the items I went to buy in the grocery store on Good Friday morning was shrimp cocktail sauce for a party we were hosting that evening with my friends Jen and Tony Fry. So he gets some of the credit or the blame for this as well. But I would vent to him and be so frustrated. And he would listen, and he would shake his head, and he agreed with what I was saying. He looked me in the eye. This is years ago, Colin. He says, I hear you, Kevin. I agree with you. He said, what are you going to do about it? And I used to have this glazed look back on what can I do about it? I mean, I can't do anything about it. I feel better venting about it. But that struck a chord with me, because now I feel like, you know what, maybe I could do something about it after all. But the opportunity is that, if this effort is successful, and I know it can be, that kindness worldwide, this movement's going to outlive me. And so, that's what I focus on. And I try to surround myself with people guided by heart, passion, and purpose. I look for heart. Heart's the foundation of everything. What's their heart space? And I have the ability, I can instantly connect and see their heart space right away. I can tell if someone's blowing smoke or if they're real. Like, I connect with you right away. I can tell your heart space immediately. But when you surround yourself with people that have that heart space and they also have passion and purpose, magic happens, miracles manifest. And when you surround yourself with those types of people, anything is impossible when you believe in the I'm possible. And we can do this together. And so that's really I focus my energies on that. But I would love more than anything for this snowball that's rolling down the mountain and getting bigger and bigger. I just hope it doesn't roll me over with it. But I really believe that there will come a time, hopefully sooner rather than later, where everyone else is just taking the torch and bring this movement and embracing it, bring it to their communities. And then I can step back because I've done enough to get to that point. Then I feel like it doesn't need me anymore. And that would make my life a whole lot better, quite honestly. When that happens, it can't happen soon enough, but I do truly believe it'll get there.
Amazing. Let's switch to the film, because I think it's actually a very good sort of segue in, because you mentioned it was very difficult to share your vision, and so the film is such a time as this, right? That's the title.
Time as this, correct? Which is the perfect title, by the way, for many, many reasons. Because this is a time for a global movement like this. This is the time, but there's a lot of other connotations. I think, as you see in that film, it is the perfect title.
Yeah. So you kindly shared me a version where I could go and watch it myself, and I'm careful not to spoil anything for anyone. But I said to you before we went live, it's amazing. Like, I was expecting something straightforward, just to tell your story, etc. And I'm not often that moved about things. And I said to you that I couldn't not watch it. And in the world of attention deficit, I didn't have my phone here. I wanted to, if I needed to step away, I was putting the volume up so I could hear it. It is amazing. And it's so smartly done, so clever. And I haven't finished it, like I said to you, but already there's so many layers to it. And it's not, I just thought it was going to be expression of, what you've done, but it's so touching, so deep, so thoughtful, really at the right pace. And we talked about this, maybe some people would like it, sort of a shorter. For me, there was even moments where I had to look away and stop myself crying. And I don't think we should stop ourselves crying. I think, especially, I'm going to say men, we think that we shouldn't cry and it's weakness or something, but it really touched me. And it's amazing to have that come out of the screen is amazing. And so all congratulations to you, the team, everyone that's put that behind it. I've even had Randy, like I said, on the live, and he comes across as amazing. And even at one point I was like, oh, I didn't touch on that with Randy. And there's so much about it, but there's clever links, and not in a, I don't know, mysterious way. It's just such a compelling watch. And if I was to sum it up, I would just say that, a compelling watch. And we can just consume loads of crap. Watch that. And I think that would be my best summary that I can give that. And again, I've still got the rest to watch. So I think I've got about 25 minutes left. But yeah, good job. Great job.
Well, thank you. I mean, that feedback really means the world to me and all of us, because it's our film. It's our story. And one of the many objectives of the film was to invite others into the story, have them immersed into the characters. These are real people. It's real life. It's real. It's raw. And everyone is allowing themselves to be vulnerable, but in the process available to share their stories, welcome others into their stories. And they're all, as you've seen, very impactful. And then come away not only being inspired, but more importantly, empowered to write the future chapters of this story together. Because as beautiful as this story is, it's only the beginning of the story. And we all in our global community have the ability to write its future chapters together, which I'm convinced to be the most beautiful yet. But I've described earlier, Colin, I mean, this journey of kindness worldwide has been nothing less than magical. It literally took on a life of its own in a way I never expected. It was nothing I ever asked for or wished for. It just happened organically, grassroots, took on a life of its own. In many cases, and probably not surprisingly, this film was a microcosm of this entire journey. Nothing was scripted. It all began innocently enough. I was in Palermo, Italy. I gave a keynote address at the General Assembly of the World Kindness Movement in October 2024. We thought at the time, and Randy was there with me, and Elia Gagoris and others, and we thought, let's bring Elgin Cahill along and let's have him record this, and maybe we'll capture some things, some moments, and we can use that to help broaden awareness of this movement. And then we started to become aware of other stories, like the ripple effects, this one act of kindness of me losing my wallet. The ripple effects of that have been vast. It's extended throughout the world and brought other people into the story who also had very powerful stories of the transformative power of kindness that have become interwoven with the underlying story. And as we became aware of them, and in the course of interviews, what came out that we didn't even know, it just opened up additional threads to take us down different directions. And so what you see in the film, and there's many tearful moments, and I wear my emotions on my sleeve, and I'm not ashamed of that. But someone jokingly counted the number of times there's tears in my, welling down my cheeks of the film. I think they said it was 8, at least 8. And but it's not just me; it's others have such powerful stories that does move people to tears for many, many reasons, not just one. When we did the initial screening in York, Pennsylvania, we had an audience of about 300 people seeing this before a live audience for the first time. We didn't know what to expect. I mean, we thought we had something special in this film because, again, it really wrote itself and it came together a beautiful way, but you never know until you're showing it before a live audience. I'm not exaggerating, Colin. I think every single one of the 300 people in the audience that evening, every single one was moved to tears, not for one reason, not for two reasons, but for multiple reasons. And every single one, I think, was moved or felt a connection to any one of several of the characters in the film. They're not characters, it's real people just sharing their stories. And I've often said, this is a film, it's very unique. It's not your typical film. It's a great film, I think, on a standalone basis, but it's a film that's not only meant to be watched, more importantly, it's meant to be felt. And it's meant to evoke meaningful conversations about topics that many people are afraid to talk about. And there's many powerful themes in this film. I'll share one thing that wasn't a film just to give people an idea of how powerful this act of kindness was. But we learned in the interview process with Brooke Dubs. She's a young woman who returned my wallet, and we're interviewing her and Emily, who drove her that day. And there's some powerful scenes that come out about, there's more to the story than meets the eye. One of the things we learned that wasn't in the film, we didn't put it in the film, but in the course of the interview process is that Brooke and Emily shared that they were a bit down on their luck at the time that morning. They were between jobs. They were struggling to make ends meet, living paycheck to paycheck, like many people in our world are. They went to the grocery store that day to buy tuna fish because that's all they could afford. Now, imagine finding a wallet and there's money in it and you're struggling to make ends meet. How easy it would have been to just take a few dollars. And you know what? Candidly, that'd have been okay with me. It wasn't the money that ever mattered to me. It was, convenience and time, and I had photos of lost loved ones, very precious memories. So it wasn't the money to me. It was what was in the wallet. And they could have done that. And they easily had every reason to do it. They didn't. Brooke did not even hesitate. She found my driver's license on, or on inside and my address. And she said, we've got to go return his wallet. No hesitation. And learning that after the fact just makes that act of kindness even more powerful than what it already was. And as things that'll come out in the film, as people will learn, there's been a boomerang effect of this act of kindness. And I often say that I was meant to go to the grocery store that morning. I have no doubt in my mind I was meant to go to the store, because my wife never sends me to the store, and for a good reason. I get lost in grocery stores. I don't know where anything is, but on that particular day, Good Friday morning of all days, she said, Kevin, could you go to the grocery store, pick up a couple items for me? And I did. No doubt I was meant to be there that day. And there's no doubt in my mind that Brooke Dubs, the young woman who found my wallet and returned it, she was meant to be the one to find it. And as people see the film, they'll understand why. But I appreciate your feedback. The more people who see this film, I know it'll not only, they'll be inspired by it, but I truly believe this film has the power to not only change lives, but save lives. This act of kindness already has done both. The more people see this film, I think it'll resonate for multiple reasons. And I think it'll inspire them to hopefully spread the word, be part of the story. As they see this film, they tell their friends, more people watch, the movement broadens and the impact expands. And that's really what it's all about.
Yeah. I think just to echo your words, I think something that really touched me is that some of the topics talked about are things that we often don't, or we're ashamed to, or we think other people will judge us negatively, etc. And so, I'm not saying that the people put there are brave. Of course they are, but I think it gives permission to open up some of these subjects and talk about it in a human, authentic way. And not only that, people are not only sharing their stories, they're sharing how kindness entered their lives. So what people did in those moments where things weren't quite okay for them. And I've often said this about kindness. I think we overlook it because we think it needs to be this grand gesture, but it can be the simplest thing. It's not, and these stories are very, very impactful, but it's the day-to-day little things that also have a big impact on people. But I think the film in itself will be such a talking point, and just conversations over dinner tables, with kids, and that's what we really should be talking about. And something I've been thinking about for a while. I had a lady, Sally Stockriser, on a live. I've had her on twice now, and she said something that stuck with me. She said she talks about emotions and how she actually worked through feeling the emotions that she felt that she wasn't connecting with. And she did a lot of research, and she said our minds are by default negatively focused. And that stuck with me, because I was like, oh, I thought we just had a choice. Okay, we think positively or negatively. But then I realized we have to work harder to think positively. There are huge benefits, but obviously, the reason we think about negatively is, there's, we're going to be in trouble. Let's go back years, for our own safety. But we've never evolved. Our brains still think negatively. But in order to do the positive side, we're going to have to work harder. And things like a film, talking points, just bringing that awareness will enable that awareness that positivity is out there, and it will inspire other people to talk about it, people in bars, in restaurants, in families, to talk about it. And I think it's such a subject that I don't know if it's misunderstood, miscommunicated. I'm not quite sure, but that film is really a talking point for such a bigger thing, but it really connects at a human level. And I think, and I was wondering, so you said about the vision, like the vision that you had, where does that film sit? Does that give all of the message, or is there more that you see? Like, is that everything?
Well, the film is a means to a bigger end, and it's a means to accelerating this movement. of kindness, awareness of kindness, the spreading of Kindness Week worldwide to more communities, and elevating kindness, as I described earlier, in the way it should be elevated, because it is humanity's greatest asset. But ultimately, it's really, from a macro grand scale, it's changing the culture. Because my good friend Dr. Jen Fraser is one of the world's leading experts on the brain science of kindness and the brain science of bullying and gaslighting and so on. And she describes it as empathy erosion. I call it an epidemic of empathy erosion, which I think explains a lot of societal trends over the last number of decades. As Jen describes it, zero empathy is evil. If there's zero empathy, it's evil. And when I grew up, for example, there were no school shootings. You never read about school shootings or mass shootings the way we do now. And of course, it's easy to blame the guns. Many people do. And that could be a conversation we have, but it's more than that, because we had guns back then and we didn't have mass shootings the way we have now. And it seems like they're happening so frequently that we're getting desensitized to it, like it's normal. We're losing empathy. We think that's just the way the world is. Well, no, I don't think we can ever accept that that's the way the world is or should be, because it wasn't that way at all times. And if you explain it in terms of empathy erosion, I think people are more connected in terms of technology, social media, but we're losing connection. Mm-hmm. And we're losing that empathy, that compassion to, our fellow humanity. And, but there's a brain science. You can restore empathy. And all is with mindful kindness, neuroplasticity, reminding people of kindness, getting to the point where kindness is just something like, I'm self-aware now, like every day, like kindness is just top of mind, looking for opportunities to be where someone is at in their world. And maybe everyone has a story, maybe taking the time to listen, understand, seek first to understand, then be understood, active listening. But unless you're in what Jen refers to as the dark triad, where you're Machiavellian, psychopath, narcissistic. I mean, those people, it's really hard to retrain the brain back towards empathy, to see the light, so to speak. But for everyone else, you can. And so by changing the culture is that, we're being conditioned to think things through a negative lens, because the media, what we watch, what we read, that's not the way the world is. And once you're aware, I always say, see the good. This act of kindness kind of snapped me out of that trance where I was being conditioned without realizing to see the world through a lens that's largely glass half empty instead of half full. But once you're more aware, and this kindness movement hits a tipping point where everyone's talking about kindness and what's up with kindness and this act of kindness that led to these great things, that's a win. Because now we can talk about, well, what does a culture of kindness entail? Let's talk about what we report in the news. What is newsworthy? I think good stories are just as newsworthy as the negative ones. Well, why don't we share more of the positive stories? Why don't we teach values and kindness more so in our classrooms to shape the minds of the future generations? So we can restore empathy, and we do it through kindness. And so, but when you're more aware of what's happening, which I do think societal trends is concerned, I say, that's where we're heading, and something needs to change. Something needs to reverse course, because if something doesn't change, and we keep going down the same path we're going on, it's not going to end well. And I think everyone recognizes it. Now we have AI. AI can do a great thing. It's going to do a lot of good in the world. But as we've learned, there's also bad actors and bad elements of humanity that are going to use it for, malevolent purposes. And we've got to be very conscientious of that. So what we feed into AI comes out. Well, we need to feed in AI and the algorithms, the positive news, the good stories, and share more of them and be more bold about sharing about kindness and how it's affected our lives, or what we're doing to bring positivity in the lives of others. And so in any event, I do feel that it's not all, we don't have to live feeling hopeless. I think there is hope, and we all have a role to play. We all can control our own actions and behaviors. And if we focus on our own actions and behaviors, we can each be the ripple to become part of more of a global wave.
Yeah. It's something that was referenced in the movie was that you're a consumer of news, and I'm the exact opposite. I cut news out from my life about 11, 12 years ago. And the reason I did that, and the example was, so I used to get the train home from work every day, and there was a newspaper, the Evening Standard at the time, and I used to read it and consume it. And oftentimes it was talking about inner city gangs, etc. And often there was pictures of these gangs, and a lot of the time they were like black young teenagers. And I realized that I started to get concerned. I was worried, and so my focus was, okay, if I saw like a young black guy, he was in a gang or something, and I was in, I needed to be scared, and that wasn't reality. I realized that I was being negatively influenced by those, and no, it's the exact opposite. And I spoke to someone who actually worked with um, some underprivileged kids that were in these gangs, and I had the fortunate um, insights to really talk to her about it, and she explained what was going on, and I was like, oh, okay, that doesn't match up with what media wants us to see. And media very much is skewed for, sensationalizing, negative outcomes. And since then I've stopped consuming. I want to experience for myself, and I believe that there's so much good in all of us. I really do. And you know people will help out. People will support us, etc. And you don't have to go far. You can see that. But if you're only looking for the negativity because that's what you've been told, then you'll see more of that. And I think if you actually focus on the kindness, you can see that it's there. And again, like I said, it doesn't need to be these uh, massive acts of kindness. Yeah, great, all for it. But those small acts matter just as much. And as you were talking about, worldwide, and I was thinking, kindness isn't actually restricted by language. Because if I'm with someone that doesn't speak the same language as me, you can still show kindness. You can do something so simple, pick up something that I dropped. That doesn't need words. And it's a universal language, like you kind of said. And it's just like, okay. And there's nothing stopping us. It's for free. It doesn't cost you anything. Yeah, the media might not like it from a negative clickbait perspective, but actually they might get behind it when they see your film. They might go, oh, okay, that's fine. And yeah, use the media for all the right reasons rather than the wrong ones. So I think that's going to be, yeah, when people realize that, and I hope it sort of sinks in, I hope to see that, especially having kids. I know that's quite selfish. I'm thinking about myself, but I want the world that we live in to be a great one. And no, I want the kids to see kindness. I don't want them to grow up in a world where everything is doom and gloom. And I think, not to put the pressure on our kids, but, I want them to know that they can, change things, and, look at people like you that, you know, it's quite selfless what you're doing, and there's a cost to it, and we talked about it, but we can have an impact, and we think it takes many, many people, but like you've rightly said throughout this, it started with you, and I know you've got people there, but it's not like huge amounts of people. But what you're doing is making an amazing movement, and you're bringing that awareness, and with that awareness brings that culture to the world that we can change something. And again, how that can have an impact on how we live our lives with our families, with our communities, with other countries. Wow, what an amazing thing.
It's so true, Colin. Well, small changes can create big impacts. And there was a Harvard study, which when I read it, I'm very focused on it. And it was a recent study that said once 3.5% of a population engages in a sustained campaign of peaceful, nonviolent resistance, change has always happened 100% of the time. And that's what this movement is. It only takes 3.5%. And so all of my efforts, energies is just, let's get to 3.5%, because there's a tipping point. And we will inspire change. And small changes, the little things are the big things, like you touched on. And our children are our future. We can shape the minds of future generations by instilling, values, leading by our example, because they're looking at us. And to be honest, many of us aren't, leading by very good examples, and so we're shaping their minds without us even realizing it. But we can learn a lot from them, from their example. And I think among the many beautiful things about this journey, this story of kindness worldwide, is that we can trace the ripple effects from this one act of kindness, a lost wallet. We can see all the connecting points, the ripples throughout the world. And that's a beautiful thing, that we can trace origins, so to speak, and see what's happened because of it. But I would argue is that each and every day, each and every one of us does frequently small acts of kindness that have just as profound ripple effects, just as meaningful impact. We may not ever see them. In most cases, we do not. But they are no less important than this one act of kindness and how it affected me. And we each have that ability within us by just making a simple choice, just to be that reason someone believes in the goodness of people, to listen to other stories and leading by our example, and just do those simple things. But this story, my story, it's really our story, as I refer to it. It's proof that no act of kindness is too small to make a difference and change a life, and that anyone can make a lasting impact, and I would argue even change the world through kind actions. Why not you? Why not me? Why not us? Because we all have that power within us. And look, the future of the world begins now, today. So let's all be the change we wish for.
Yeah, and something that keeps playing on my mind, especially I'm just coming back to the movie. It's when we think about ourselves, we think that we can't move mountains. But what actually shows up for me is the synchronicities that open up, the people that you meet, and you go, oh, wow, okay, so that happened, so then that happened, so then that happened. I'm just interested in your opinion. Do you think it was written that way? Like, do you think we have like a purpose or things, or it's because of the actions that you took that those things opened up?
Well, I think it's all the above, but there have been so many serendipitous moments in this journey, I've lost count. And some of them are touched on in the film. I call them God winks, coincidences, call them what you will. I'm convinced that there are no coincidences. I could tell you things that would give you chills, even years before this act of kindness on Good Friday morning happened. I mean, I knew there was something coming. I felt it. And I can see how, call it accident, serendipity, whatever, but I'm meeting people on this journey that I know I'm meeting for the right reasons at the perfect time, who are now in their own way, writing future pages of this story, and it's just amazing. Nothing will surprise me anymore. Absolutely nothing, because when you live it and you experience it, and so many serendipitous moments, one after another, I often say the universe has its ways. And has its reasons, and what the universe wants, the universe gets. And I think this is a time where, a lot of positive energy is coalescing, a lot of momentum is building. And I think we underestimate the power of our thoughts, power of suggestion, the power of positive thinking. There's actually a science behind it, but any one of us, we're a product of our thoughts. And it's often said the only difference between a good day and a bad day is our attitude. I choose, I have my moments. So we all do, but I choose to make every day a good day. And it's not often what happens to us that matters, because often we focus on adversity and we all experience it. But it's not what happens to us, it's how we respond that matters. And we're at a crossroads, I think, in our world history. As a global community, we can go down this path, and if we do, it's not going to end well. Or we can choose mindful kindness, positive thinking, to redirect our energies on going down this path. And I can't control the actions of others. I can only control my own. And that was a paradigm shift in this journey. Once I stopped pointing the finger at others and looked in the mirror and pointed at me, and I realized I've got to change. I've got to be better. I got to do better. If I lead by my example and try to be the best I can, maybe, just maybe it'll inspire others to follow it. I can control what I do. Can't control anyone else. And the reality is every single one of us can control our actions, behaviors, how we respond to unkindness. if we respond to unkindness with more unkindness, it's not going to end well. We respond with unkindness with kindness, it always ends well. We can control that. We can be the change we wish for.
Yeah, it's I've talked about this on a live before. It's there's a I saw a YouTube video ages and ages ago, and there was a festival in this muddy field, and there was a guy, and I don't know if he was
How do you
uh,
get a movement?
he,
The lone nut.
huh?
That's what you're referring to.
Yeah, and he's just going crazy. So I don't know if he's on substance but he's enjoying himself in his own world. And there's a lot of onlookers looking at him, and basically, like, I don't know if they're laughing at him. I can't remember that, but he was laughing. He was dancing on his own, crazy dancing, but he seemed to be enjoying it. No one was joining him, and then this one other person came and danced with him. I don't even think he was, sort of, trying to make him feel okay, but it gave permission to basically the whole crowd. And when you see it from a visual perspective, you're like, oh wow. You go, oh, okay. Then you realize the act of that other person. It's not always the first person; it's the second person. It's quite something, and yeah, it sticks in my brain. And I think people should pay. Not should pay. They don't have to do anything, but I think if they saw that, you realize how psychology works, and that movement that you're doing, it is basically that as well, right? And
I
it's
agree.
going to get more momentum. But
Well, Derek Silvers it's a TED talk, I think, by Derek Silvers, and about how to create a movement. It shows this lone nut dancing by himself, and then it talks about the first followers, and then that's kind of giving permission, right? And then the whole hillside starts dancing with the lone nut, and then it's a movement, right? And it's funny you mentioned that, because that video, the first time I saw it, Colin, it inspired me, because I could relate to it. I'm like, I'm the lone nut. And now the first followers are starting to join. And it's just a matter now to the whole hillside, right? The whole global community starts to join together. But I can relate to that. I definitely highly recommend that video to anyone who wants to watch it, because it really relates to really what this movement is all about and how it's happening.
Yeah. It's very powerful. So before I'm conscious of time, but I'll just try and wrap up in a second. But in terms of the film, when is it actually officially released to the general public?
Great question. It really depends. We hope is as more audiences see it, they leave their IMDb reviews, that will ultimately get a distribution deal, because now it opens up to public performances, to mass audiences. Could be in theaters, could be on Amazon Prime or Hulu or streaming service. So right now we can only do private screenings. And so we're doing private screenings. If anyone in your community or any of your viewers or listeners would like to consider, bringing a screening to their community, we can talk about that. We just can't do any public performances. We can't sell tickets yet. We have entered it into film festivals, all the major ones. I got word today that we were accepted into one major film festival, so stay tuned on that. And the hope is as it gets more traction and more eyeballs and more feedback like yours, people are inspired to watch the film, be part of this movement, that there's going to be a distributor out there that's going to want to say, hey, let's be part of this story and bring this movement to wider audiences, and we all can change the world. So those distributors out there, if anyone's listening, they can be that first follower, so to speak, be that first distributor to see the magic in our midst and be part of this. Help us share the story. And as we share this story together, we can create the positive impact in the world that the world needs now at this time, for such a time as this.
Yeah. And we talked about this, the other day, but your crazy world that it is at the moment, that's going to become more crazy, right? Do you have any expectations for what that might be, or do you prefer not to think about that?
Well, I've been aware of that early on in this journey, Colin. And when you talk about greatest fears, that's mine. There's a price. And let's assume I say when, because it's going to happen, this movement gets to 50 governors, United Nations, because I know I'm not going to stop until it does. And I don't know if it's going to be weeks, months, or years, but I'm going to keep going. And the more people coalesce around this, the more apt that's going to happen. So assume that happens. What does that mean? What's the price for that? I think it speaks for itself. I'm not looking forward to that at all. I certainly would like to remove myself and not be the face of anything. But it's almost like the bigger this becomes, the more it kind of shines a light on me that I don't want. That's why in many cases I try to deflect it. We have ambassadors that we name, and there's many people that are part of this story that have made this movement what it is. And so at some point in time, when this hits a tipping point and it's in the mainstream circles and people are talking about this movement and how it happened, and they're going to want to point the finger at me, and I understand that. I'm going to say, you know what? All these other people, look at them, look at their stories, listen to how they played a role in this, because we all did this together. None of us can get through this world or do anything alone, but together we can change the world. This is our story. And so, but I'm also well aware that, I can't help in terms of my role in the story. It's an important role in the story, but Brooke Dubs is just an important role. Her act of kindness started it all. Commissioner Muldrow issuing kindness citations. I don't think this movement would have gone anywhere without people seeing a police commissioner issuing kindness citations as enthusiastically as he did. Randy McNeely's role in the story, Ilya Gagoris, the World Kindness Movement. We're all writing the story together, but I just hope that when it hits that tipping point, that people are going to see all of us, and as they see all of us, they see less of me. Because if that doesn't happen, maybe that's when I run away into the mountains with my guitar and just hide for a few months.
Well, I think you will have deserved it for sure. But it's sad to want the success of it. Yeah, I want you to be okay. I think that's, I say that because, we've talked about this, and this, and I come back to pretty much the first thing I said. You're just an ordinary guy, and you're taking on this huge role and responsibility, and it's not necessarily you had a choice, but you didn't really. And there's an impact, there's a weight, probably hugely invisible to all of us. The burden that you carry, the emotions that and the stories, yes, they're impactful, but there's a lot in listening to those stories and holding the space for other people. And you deserve a rest. I hope you get to enjoy your legacy. But for today, thank you so much. I really appreciate you giving me your time. Thank you for making that film, really. Like I said, I don't often get consumed by films anymore. I wish I did, and yours did. So for anyone that wants to watch it, where they should come and find you on LinkedIn or website, where's the best place to reach out to you?
Well, LinkedIn, I'm on LinkedIn, but also the website, kindnessworldwide.org. We have trailers to the film, resources to bring Kindness Week to your communities, and all kinds of materials. But I would like to say just one thing in closing, and I appreciate all you shared. I don't ask for much. I do have one humble request of you and your viewers and audiences. Just keep me and my wife in your prayers. This is bigger than us, and we're giving it all we got, and we're going to give it the best we can. But prayers will be welcomed. We need them. We all do. But I appreciate you, Colin. You become a good friend and a big champion of this as well. Just sharing the story today has been a blessing. And there's a lot more of the story to come. So stay tuned.
Fantastic. Well, your wife, Anne, so my prayers are with you both. If there's anything that you ever need from me and I can help you in any way, I'm putting it out there publicly. Let me know, and I will do what I can. And we'll stay in contact for sure. And I'm glad that we got to have this conversation, and I'm glad there are people like you in this world, for myself, for my children, for others, and inspiring. And for today, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Colin. I appreciate you, my friend.
All right. Take care. Thanks, Kevin.